Are we going to start recording?
It started.
Okay, great. Welcome, everyone, to the April Student Support meeting. My name is Michelle Heitman. I'm the Student Navigator and Instructional Support at Whatcom Community College up in Bellingham. And today, we are going to be discussing and hopefully sharing together about effective presentations. I'll be going over some tips and best practices. Then we'll share together and do a bit of a show and tell of presentations that a few of you have been giving, and I'll share a few of my own, and together we'll be able to discuss some strategies and topics and questions that we have around giving presentations in our positions. And then after that, I'll review some presentation resources, and then we'll do any challenges and best practices discussion as we usually do. So to start off, I wanted to facilitate this meeting today because in this position I've been able to experiment a little bit more than I've have in the past on different presentation styles. And not only the content and presentation like activities and strategies that I've been using, but also different presentation mediums, like using different presentation programs, not just PowerPoint, but trying out different online presentation programs that I have found very interesting. So basically, a goal of what I was hoping we would discuss during our meeting today is a goal is to create an opportunity for us to share a variety of presentations and have a discussion, offer feedback and ideas. And so I'm hoping that to hear from all of you. Feel free to chat. Oh, I see a chat already started. But it's a little challenging as a facilitator to go back and forth with the chat. So if you can, please just pick up the phone and share any questions anytime during the presentation. I really strongly encourage you to use the phone to chime in anytime. Feel free to interrupt me as often as you want, and hopefully we can hear from all of you during this meeting over the phone. So, and then an additional component I wanted to cover during this meeting was the resources, like I said, being able to show and model a few of the different presentation programs that are out there, because there's some really interesting new technology available for us. So to get going, in my short tips and best practices, I used this website called HeW, which was very interesting. It was my first time using it, so bear with me. The HeW was really easy to use and really easy to find visuals and pictures to help with the presentation, but it was also really challenging to put content on the presentation, so, you know, and very much text effectively. So it was good to use. I don't know if I'd use it again, but it's interesting and it's helpful to model and share with you guys. So first tip and takeaway that I wanted to cover was knowing what your goal is for your presentation. Similar to everything we do in our positions, I think it's vital to know what our goals are and our objectives are for all of our activities that we're doing with students. So knowing our purpose and objectives can help clarify our outcomes that we're hoping to reach, and also make our strategies more simplified and effective. So if you're starting to create a new presentation, or if you're refreshing a current presentation, making sure that you can clearly articulate what your outcomes are for a presentation, and what you want to achieve, what you want the students to achieve through participating in a workshop or presentation. So like I said, the more clear your outcome or objectives are, the more likely students will walk away with those outcomes. And you don't have to state the goals during the presentation, but it can help focus and streamline the content that you're creating and better articulate your purpose and goal during the presentation. So an example or a couple examples of goals could be students will identify their own learning style and create a list of study strategies. So two sort of outcomes you're hoping for is that students will be able to identify their own learning styles from what you're sharing, and then also create a list, a takeaway that they will have to move forward. Another example could be students will learn key components of professional behavior and create an action plan for increasing their professionalism. So these could be goals that you reference as you're creating both the presentation content and any activities to help focus what you are going to be sharing with students so you keep things on track. And I think sort of more importantly, having enticing presentations is incredibly important. As many of you can relate, it can be really challenging for to get students to show up to presentations. I know that is a challenge with myself, and I've heard from several of you that it can be challenging. So having enticing marketing for your presentations, not just enticing content, but being aware of what title you use for your presentation, I think is important to look at. So having like a figurative carrot listed in the presentation title can be really helpful. Or I wanted to throw out, like, using marketing strategies that you see in social media can also help attract students. So some examples, there we go. Some examples could be interviewing skills to land your perfect internship. So that's a title, a presentation title that has the outcome right in the title. So, you know, not just having a presentation that markets interviewing skills, but it draws that connection to maybe a future internship opportunity that they have, or having 3 easy steps to save time studying versus a title such as study strategies. So what can be helpful in this title is, you know, it's 3 steps, it's easy, and students see that they're going to save time by coming to your presentation versus maybe just knowing a more effective study strategy, which they might see the value in but not choose to participate. So it really breaks down what they're going to get out of the presentation. And then the last one I've never used, but I thought I've seen it on campus here with our student life activities. They've been using a lot of social media strategies like hashtags, which I'm not huge on hashtags, but I just want to throw it out there that it might be an effective way to market your presentations to get students to show up. Our school has been, our student life, like I said, has been using these types of marketing strategies, and I thought they're interesting. Has anyone seen that as well on campus with your student life? Anyone? Any social media marketing? No? Possibly? Okay.
I haven't seen it, Michelle, but I'm sure it's happening.
Yeah. I'm like, I have a Facebook page for myself, and I'm friends with like a lot of the campus Facebook pages at Whatcom, so I see a lot of what they're doing on social media and can help share and promote that way. So that's why seems like I'm getting a lot of that.
It's a great idea, though.
Yeah. On that note, having the enticing sort of titles to your presentations. It's not necessarily changing any content at all, and that's not what I'm getting at. It's just having a really straightforward and clear title to your presentation to help get students interested. So having engaging presentations. So saying that you want to have an engaging presentation, it's pretty easy to say, but it can be challenging to do effectively because it is challenging to facilitate a presentation with either online or with really a diverse group of students who have different needs and different ability levels. So a few tips in regards to engaging presentations are keeping them visual and keeping them interactive. So starting off with visual, I'm going to navigate over to this link that I thought was interesting, just to give a context about visual medium these days and give some data on how effective visual medium is. Is that showing up? Oopsies. Does that show up all right for you guys?
Yeah, I see it fine, Michelle. 13
okay.
reasons.
Yeah, mine is formatted a little strange, but so it is an infographic about infographic, but it has some interesting data on it. So basically, the use of visual information has increased so much, and and currently it's everywhere through the internet and newspapers. There's so much more visual content available through media, and that's because we're visually wired. 50% of your brain involves visual processing, and 70% of all your sensory receptors are in your eyes. I found that really interesting. And it is really quick for us to process visual media. Like within fractions of seconds, we are processing versus something that we read, which can take quite a bit longer. So having visual images can help, make the information be absorbed quicker and easier to absorb for students. So yeah, we may be on information overload, but visual media helps sort of mitigate that. Let's see. And
Michelle,
so,
can you hear me?
Hello?
This is Pat from Clover Park. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Listen, I just want to point out a couple things on the chat that's going on. Brandy wants you to share the link from the infographics again.
Okay.
Earlier that she had a Facebook page.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Sorry, I'm sort of focused on talking, and so I'm not checking the chat as much. So sorry about that. But thanks for chiming in and saying that. Brandy, if you want to chime in, for sure. Let me grab this really quick. Okay, hopefully that worked. All right, so basically researchers have found that color visuals increase willingness to read by 80%. Color is much more engaging, and then also it's much more accessible to read. Let's see, and this might be easier to look in your, if you click on the link and look in your own browser, but, and it's more persuasive. So studies have shown that having visual information is actually more persuasive than just verbal information. So that's interesting and helpful. And then it's also the most important thing, I think, on this infographic is that visual information is easier to recall. So people here remember 10% of what they hear, 20% of what they read, and then 80% of what they see and do. And so that was my big takeaway, that when individuals see and are doing things, they are able to remember it and recall it much better. So it's, I don't know, it's easier to digest and fun to share. So let's see. So on that note, having the visual content and then also the seeing and the doing, making it easier to remember, having interactive components to presentations. And so I just want to throw out a few options for this, and I think they'll be fleshed out when we're doing the show and tell, and a few of you will be able to just share some of your activities that you've been doing. So examples are, you know, obviously asking questions throughout your presentation. It's easier to do in person for sure, because you can call on someone a little bit easier. Worksheets, keeping them engaged and involved, answering questions on a worksheet throughout a presentation. Having handouts that individuals can follow along, visually seeing it on the presentation and then on a piece of paper in front of them, and they can take that home. As I've also wanted to throw out like polling. There's new polling apps you can use, so the whole audience can like poll along and give feedback, and you can integrate that into your presentation these days. And then I also encourage you to think about next steps. So having an interactive presentation, creating an action plan through your presentation for individuals to and students to know what their next steps are going to be, so you can follow up individually and create more of a connection with students after the presentation, like in the next week, contacting each one to see, you know, how maybe their study strategies have changed, and it helps develop that relationship and rapport with students. So, so we can move into a bit of the show and tell. We're going to have Jennifer share 3 of her presentations. They're incredibly visual, they're really well manicured, and also they are, you know, she has good sort of activities to engage students, and might have some interesting strategies for giving presentations online. So Jennifer, do you want to take the lead now? Yeah, thank you.
Sure, let's see.
I don't know how to transfer.
Okay. Oh, I did it.
Thanks.
So all 3 of these PowerPoint presentations that I'm about to show you were webinars I presented to students within our grant. So the first one was on time management, because that's one of the biggest things students struggle with. So I put together this PowerPoint on time management, and it is kind of just an overview. I am really big on using, trying not to use too many definitions, trying not to use too many words, but I like things to be very aesthetically pleasing. So I have a lot of visual aids and lots of pictures throughout my presentation. So you'll probably see that as kind of a theme, a running theme. And what's great about this presentation in particular is I used a lot of examples. The pictures are actually examples about the things I'm talking about. So there's, this just shows kind of like a little mini planner. But on the next slide here, I believe, I showed a couple examples of other types of planners that I was kind of discussing, and especially this little visual organizer at the bottom. And in my presentation, I actually physically held up my own planner, which is very similar, and did this and showed my students just how many things are written down on my personal organizer, just to show them that the, examples of what they should be recording, and just kind of give them a real live example. But I really do like using visual aids. And here's another example of that, kind of a to-do list. some little notes that kind of draw attention, a little pieces of advice along the way, and SMART goals, kind of example picture graphic of that, and then just the end here. So that would be a kind of a standard presentation for me. And then
how does that work? Did you ask, or did any of the students bring up like time management and using technology or cell phones, or did that discussion come up? Or
that's a great question. I did mention that they could. I'm kind of old school, so I used a physical paper planner, but I did mention that there's lots of apps on your phones now, and some people like to have their calendars on their smartphones, and we did bring that up. Actually, that's a great question. And also, I encourage students to stop me and ask questions throughout the presentations. And I believe in this presentation, I also asked questions. I would pause and ask, okay, how many of you actually do use an organizer right now, or a graphic organizer, or have a planner? I think I asked a couple of questions, but I have done questions in the past too through WebEx, where you actually create the questions and the students have to select answers. I've done that as well.
Oh, cool.
Sometimes it's just easier to ask them, though.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that presentation.
Can you run through it really quickly again, especially the last few slides?
Okay, the last two?
The last few. Yeah, I like that focus. And what was the one before that? Try the 5 minutes about.
Oh, the 5-minute start? Oh, this is a great tip. It's just when this is good, and it can be applied in so many different instances. If you're procrastinating, or if there's something that you've really been avoiding, the trick is to just give it 5 minutes of your time. Just start it. Put in 5 minutes. Tell yourself, I'm just going to work on this for 5 minutes. And that's really all you need to get you started, and you'd be surprised that you'll be working on it for 30 minutes plus, and you can most likely get that task done and over with. But it's really just that getting over that avoidance and that procrastination and dread of starting something. And really it's just that it's been proven that if you just give something 5 minutes of your time, that the momentum typically carries you into finishing that task.
I love that you share that tip with them.
Yeah. So that's that one. Should I share the next? Oh, and the one before it. Piecemeal. So if students have like a large research project or a large paper, often students will prolong doing those things or get started last minute because it's such a big, daunting task often. So if you break it up into small pieces, it's a lot easier to get started, and it's a lot less overwhelming to break it into smaller pieces and start working away on it.
This is all really great because I had a class last night that I was talking to, and they got really excited about that, you know, kind of a 5-minute start. For me, it was a 12-minute start to mute the television for, you know, during the commercials, to mute the television and spend that time reading and really focusing on what they're doing. And that they would be surprised how many times they looked up and the TV had gone, kept going, and they were still reading. And so it was kind of the same idea. So I love that you're sharing that in class.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
all very neat and clean PowerPoint. I need to take some lessons from you. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I probably spend a little too much time on them, honestly.
And then Brandy has some comments too, if you want to share.
Chat. Let's see. Sharing them with everyone. Oh, sure. I can definitely send these to everyone. Brandy, not a problem. Use electronic. Okay, and then ask if they use a paper or electronic planner and tell them this. Yeah, phone reminders is a good idea too. Write appointments down. Yeah, good idea. Especially if they're meeting with you. see. I think I'm going to go on to my next. I don't want to hoard all the time here.
No, please. We have plenty of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just cancel out of this one. Let's see. Another one. There it is. Okay. So this one, this is, this PowerPoint was on kind of an all-encompassing talk on preparing for a quiz or an exam. And it's everything from being physically prepared, mentally prepared, what to study, and it gets into the actual questions too of techniques when faced with a multiple choice question versus an essay question or a true-false question. So this is the beginning of this one. So I like kind of giving the students, it's almost like a table of contents of what you're going to have, what's going to be in this presentation. Okay, so the next few slides are going to cover the physical, emotional, and intellectual aspects of being prepared. So that's going to give them a heads up. And again, I intersperse lots of pictures here. And I try not to write too much, and I try not to read everything either when I'm presenting the information. I'll actually only read a couple of these things that I actually have listed, because most people can read faster than I can talk. So this talks about the physical aspects of preparing for a test. This kind of goes into the mental aspect of it. Again, I like to throw in these little icons here and there. Sometimes just clip art and anything I can take from Creative Commons. Kind of when I'm discussing a concept, I'll kind of do some, what do they call it? Not brainstorming, but mapping. Mapping like on this slide. Let's see. Again, just a few icons here and there. Here's when I discuss techniques when students are doing faced with a true or false question. There's some really good rules of thumb to use of whether the statements are true or false based on how they're worded. Essay questions. Here's kind of techniques when doing essay questions. I tell the students good luck at the end. Yeah, I would say one best practice I use with all of my presentations is I always offer a copy of the PowerPoint to students that attend. So I will email them after the presentation and give them each a copy so they can refer to it later or whenever is convenient for them to look back at. Okay, and then I believe there's just one more. Yep. So this was a PowerPoint presentation on learning styles, what they are, how to identify them, and how to apply them in both an in-classroom setting and an online class setting. Now, I'm going to warn you that this is a bit more verbose on a bunch of these slides than I typically put, and it's because I have so much information on this topic that it's kind of hard to narrow it down. But on this slide, I use a quote, I use questions to kind of highlight what we're going to be discussing. This one is, again, a bit more heavy on definitions and lots of wording on these ones.
It's broken up. I feel like it's still effective because it's broken up on the screen and it moves your eyes so you're not just overwhelmed all at once. So
good.
Yeah,
I try to, and again, I try not to read everything. I actually like this idea. Here, I actually list some websites. Sometimes people will write them down, or with modern technology, we just cut and paste them and send them on after we're done. But some people who like to write them down, I sometimes like to put the web addresses on the slides. this is actually a short learning style inventory that you can do real easily, just even by looking at the screen. Let's see if I can.
You do handouts, or do they
do? Yes.
Yeah.
I actually have handouts with this presentation, and the website I mentioned in the previous screen here takes the students for free, and I've checked them recently to make sure they're still active, but these websites take them the free interest inventories that literally take minutes, and they'll identify a student's learning style. So this is just an example of a real comprehensive one that I made back in the day. So then I go through, the font's a little light on here, but I go through each learning style, so starting with visual, and I present the information in different ways. I present it in word form, I present it in pictures, and then the next slide we'll talk about visual learning in both a traditional classroom setting and an online, because I do have a lot of online students.
That's really
and
great.
Often the tips don't really fit with that as much. So I tried to think of my audience and tailor the presentation towards who I was presenting to.
Hey, Jennifer, your phone's cutting out. Is your thumb over the receiver part there?
No. Is that better?
All right. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. So here's just an example of Auditory Learner, again, with some pictures and some listing, and then the next page breaks it up into online tips for online students, tips for traditional class students, and has I tried to put these in different colors, too, to denote the different types of learner. This is the kinesthetic, the third type. Pictures again, and tips for online. Let's see. And I tried to present information in different ways too, especially with this being a learning style presentation. If you can do visual, meet the visual aspect of doing pictures and visual aids, infographics. I list information for those people who learn better by reading, and then also auditory. Often when I'm on these pages where there's a lot of bullets, I'm only going to mention a few of them, and I may elaborate on some of the things that are on here that is not written on here. Expand upon. And I
think you're really highlighting a great strategy of doing the visual, the auditory, the reading. Having all the different styles involved in a presentation is really, really valuable and vital when you're giving presentations to groups of students.
The one thing I would like to do is I would like to make it more physically engaging, or just having more activities and hands-on. I know it's kind of hard to do with PowerPoint presentations, but most recently we had a resume workshop. And at the end, there was a resume that had all these different aspects that were wrong with it. And the students had to chime in and actually physically talk about the aspects that were wrong with it based on all the information they were just presented. And I really like the idea of having examples for students to really engage and interact during the presentation, having examples of what you're presenting and them kind of applying the knowledge in some way. So I'm working on that aspect, is just how to make these even more engaging.
That's great. Thank you so much. What are your suggestions when giving presentations online and to your online students?
We heavily use WebEx for a lot of our online presentations. So in the beginning, when we're just starting our webinar, I think it's great to just give a basic overview of how to use WebEx and how to use the basic tools like the chat function, et cetera, just for those students who may have not be as familiar with it. Encouraging questions again, I think everybody knows how difficult it is to ask questions during a presentation, or if there's a lot of students in the online, it may be intimidating even though you can't see anyone, but really encouraging people to speak up, I think is somewhat challenging. But yeah, again, just keeping the engagement aspect is great, and then following up with students at the end. Yeah. See, there's some information in the chat here. Okay. Prezi is a more interactive presentation tool. Yeah, I've actually played with Prezi a little bit, and I'm currently working with a program called VoiceThread that's even more so interactive, and that's another one I'm going to start using with students. Oh, there's some.
Yeah, I'm going to be showing a couple of Prezis when I'm sharing my examples in just a moment. So that'll be fun to
hear that. I think that's great, Brandy. Anything that's easily shared and accessed is great, especially if it's free.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see. Should I pass the controls back over to you? Okay.
Sure. So next up, Patricia or Pat's going to be sharing two of her presentations. Pat, are you ready?
I am. I'm just trying to figure out how this works.
Okay.
Do I manage it from my side, or do you manage it from your side?
Can we have Pat manage it, Roger?
Yep.
Or
we just need to make her the presenter here. I'll
okay.
She's the presenter right now.
Unfortunately, I don't have a camera, so you're not going to be able to see me, but...
That's all right.
Okay, so right above where you see the slides, you'll see the left and right arrows, and that's how you change. Okay, you got it.
Perfect. Okay, so I actually was teaching a career development course, and these are just a couple of, it was an 11-week course, and it was very interactive. I let students kind of run the show, and then I would, kind of post weekly, and we had a lot of interaction and a lot of talking back and forth. So a lot of what you're seeing is geared towards Workforce Investment Act youth, which haven't had college experience before, or iBest youth, because that's my first job here on campus is the iBest navigator. So a lot of that you're seeing is geared towards those youth. So there's a lot of guidelines involved, a lot of redirecting, that kind of thing. But once we get past that, we usually have a really good time. So this is just, after looking at Jennifer's information, I'm feeling like I really need to up my game, Jennifer. Your presentation is awesome.
Sorry.
Yeah. So this is just what I usually start out simply with is a quote. And I can't see the first page on this for some reason.
That's all I got when you sent it to me.
Oh, okay.
So
all right. I'm trying to figure out. I believe this was on networking, probably. And I usually start out with a quote on reflection and let them kind of talk about, the quote and what that means to them in relation to the lesson. And then we talk about, the arrow or the bullet point down here, finding employment is ultimately about making connection. And that's just highlighting the lesson. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this lesson for these students. And so the next, there is a lot of writing typically, because when I started out with vague slides, what I found out more often than not was students would say, would you send that to me, and can you write what we talked about? So I started adding more to the slides because they ended up being what I would send them after the lesson plan. And so they started getting fuller and fuller rather than lighter and lighter on information, because the students wanted that information. So this is what they would get after the lesson plan, and almost every time we'd walk away and they'd say, can you send me that? So this is all their information, and they would usually hold on to it and utilize it later. But we talked here about making a connection and how easy, how hard it is to make, how short a time you have. And then the last bullet point down there was know yourself so you can sell yourself. was the idea or the major concept we're trying to, the 60-second commercial. So here's just the do's and the don'ts of the 60-second commercial. And again, we're having a lot of conversation during this time. We're talking, I mean, usually the PowerPoint is a backdrop. The classes are very interactive. There's usually a lot of handouts, a lot of activity going on. I actually will make them do a little skit sometimes of a 60-second commercial, or sometimes they'll just work on, you know, somebody will volunteer to come up and do a 60-second commercial, and sometimes we'll just have three people do a little skit on a 60-second commercial. So it's just really about them getting so comfortable with their, you know, with themselves and with talking to people that they can really sell themselves when they're out and do it with the interviewing skills.
And so, Pat, how do you get them to participate? You know, if people are feeling shy, or, you know, how does that manifest in your presentations to get people up in front of a group talking about themselves? That seems really potentially pretty daunting for a lot of people. So how?
I really don't think I give them a choice.
Okay.
You know, part of it is that I'm hoping that I make them really comfortable in the class, because that's really what it's all about, is just making them feel really comfortable, encouraging from day one that this is really a sharing environment and that we're here to have fun, along with, you know, along with learning, but we're here to have fun too, and we're here to learn something together. And not kind of, you know, I don't like to give the idea that what happens in the classroom stays in this classroom, but but there is a little bit of that. It's like, you know, if you have a little fun, that's okay. You can loosen up here. And usually there's always those 1 to 3 students that are a little bit more comfortable than others. And I kind of turn them into my helpers. You know, it's like, you know, come on up here and help me out, or is there anybody that would like to volunteer? And a lot of times I always get one. If I don't get one, I kind of have to carry it myself, but I've become a really good actress. So, so I think a lot of it is just getting them to feel comfortable, you know, getting them to be okay with what they share. If they really don't feel comfortable sharing up in front of the class, I've had students have to go to the back of the class and stand behind the classroom. I've had students that say, I can do this in the corner, you know, and then a lot of times when we're having a good time, it just comes naturally to them.
Right.
But I think that it's important to say, yes, we are learning something, but we're also here to, you know, to have fun and to relax a little bit. So don't make it such a learning, you know, so much learning that it becomes all about, you know, the learning, because students learn when they're relaxed a lot better than they learn when they're uptight and nervous.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so good questions, though. So the tell me about yourself is usually, you know, again, their background, their skills and strengths. And the whole idea behind this PowerPoint is to get them really comfortable with knowing themselves. And one example I give them is, you know, the first time maybe I gave, you know, the first time you went in for an interview and you kind of said your name and your school, and that was it. And then by the 5th time you go into an interview, you're telling them everything about yourself and maybe a little bit too much information. So you have to find a nice balance between the two. And then what we do, like I said, it's just short and sweet, and then we write and present a 60-second commercial. Sometimes we'll do a skit. Sometimes we'll just break off in groups. I mean, just whatever they're feeling, I let them take the lead for the most part on that. And then, so that's kind of it for that one. Anybody have any questions on that one? Crickets. I'm feeling for you, Michelle.
No, this is great. No, I was just wondering, I mean, have you ever tried like recording, or so people can hear themselves or see themselves giving the commercial? I mean, that's even more stress, but it might be interesting for somebody to hear how they
that's not a bad idea. I know that our speech and debate, you know, that gentleman does a lot of that kind of stuff. Again, these are inexperienced students a lot of times, or students that are coming back to college after a while. So I think that would probably be a little bit too much stress. And
yeah,
honestly,
for sure.
I'm not that tech savvy, so I'd have to come in and help me out with all of that.
Oh,
but we haven't gotten to that, but I think that's a great idea. And there is an agency that I work very closely with here at Clover Park. It's the REACH Center, which is our Workforce Investment Act people. It's the Educational Opportunity Center, and then there's a REACH Youth Center as well. And so if they want more help, I refer them out to either the WorkSource Center on campus, the REACH Center, the Educational Opportunity Center, and we now have a new Career Center here on campus, which is doing all of that as well. So there's a lot of, sorry about that. There's a lot of assistance that they can get, you know, after these classes. There's a lot of referrals and offices that we work with that they can get a lot of career development assistance with as well. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. So should I go ahead and go on to the next one then?
Sure.
Okay. And so would that be lesson 6? Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
So I believe this is, you know, basically the old and the new world of job search. We talk a little bit about that. Students are, you know, I mean, there really is no defined way for job search anymore. It's not, some places are not technical and they want to see you and they still want to shake your hands. And a lot more, of course, are going to the internet, so you never even get to see a person. You never get to talk with anybody. You might be one of 200 candidates. You know, there's just so many ways to apply for a job, and they want you to follow the exacting application information so you can, you know, either get your job through WorkSource. And so it's really confusing, and I find it, you know, confusing for myself when I talk to people. I say, what's the best practice for finding a job? And, you know, it's just all over the place. I mean, it's like sometimes they say, well, we don't do that yet. We want you to do it this way. So here is where kind of what Michelle was saying earlier, that you know, that visual, the hearing, the physicality of the, you know, of the presentation comes in. We do a lot, again, we do kind of a lot of play acting. We do a lot of, you know, examples. We just do a lot of talking. I mean, what's your experience been like? You know, and how is that different if you're 45 years old than you are if you're 22 years old? How are your experiences different? And so we're doing a lot of talking and conversing and sharing of best practices in the classroom so that those students know, you know, maybe things, they change up so quickly sometimes that a lot of times we don't even know what to do. So we just have to follow the exacting directions, that kind of thing. So we talk a little bit about the changing world of job search, the traditional versus the modern day. Again, I have a lot of 40 to 60-somethings, and they are, you know, they were used to the day when we pulled out the newspaper and on Sundays and then went Monday door to door, you know, selling ourselves, shaking hands, that kind of thing. The younger generation, well, not even the younger generation, this generation, has a whole different way of doing things. We have networking, we have to find, you know, websites and job postings and use LinkedIn and YouTube, and Brandy's talking about Prezi, and so there's all kinds of things now we have to do that we hadn't had to do before. And so the real information here is letting them know that to follow the job description and be as exacting as they possibly can in when the job description asks for it, to give it to them, okay? Yeah. And so then we talk about networking, and we talk about how important it is to really just talk with everybody and anybody and put the bug in anybody's ear. And again, a lot of conversation, a lot of sharing. They'll tell us, well, this worked for me and this worked for me. And hopefully they're taking good notes, because their peers sometimes are their best teachers. And I think that's been something that a lot of the students have learned. Especially in hemodialysis, our DOL grant students. And so then we just, we talk about networking and encourage students to go out and network for themselves and really start hitting literally everybody, you know, from the person behind the counter at McDonald's to the person on the bus, pretty much everybody. So again, a lot of talking, role playing, a lot of listening to one another, you know, and it's probably not very many visuals, but that is something I think just looking at Jennifer's stuff that I would like to add into my PowerPoints in the future.
Great, thanks, Pat. That was really helpful to review all the activities and interactive strategies that you use. I think that was a big takeaway for me when I was reviewing your presentations. So thank you so much. I'm just briefly going to share a couple. Maybe I'll just do one of my presentations. So I'm going to pop over. It's a Prezi, and okay, there we go. Hopefully that works. Is that working? All right, so I'm not going to review the content much. Basically, I gave this presentation to a cohort of students about halfway through their program to start thinking forward to not only the clinical skills they're developing, but the soft skills. And so what I did was I gathered a bunch of job descriptions, and I outlined what are the top soft skills that are highlighted in each, in all the medical assisting job posting, so they can start thinking through what are skills that employers are looking for, and how can, and we developed during our presentation an action plan to develop some soft skills. So I used Prezi, and I wanted to just basically show you guys what Prezi looks like if you haven't seen it already. So some people get a little nauseous when going through these slides because it bounces around a little bit, but if you do it the right way, which I'm not saying I'm like the best at, but sometimes it keeps people engaged because it keeps you moving through, and it's nonlinear, it's just a little bit more animated to be able to highlight different content. So yeah, so I'm highlighting soft skills and what is written in some of the job descriptions, and boom, 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 here we go. But here's sort of what a Prezi can look like. There's a variety of different formats available, so you don't have to create this sort of template. It's all there for you and really easy. So let's see. Stop. Oh, and I'll just, yeah, I'll stop sharing this now, and I'll and because of time, so I've found Prezi to be really helpful and effective. Yeah. So does somebody ask? Okay. So I like Prezi, if that's the question that's being asked. I like Prezi because it's really easy to use, and it's really easy to keep people engaged, and you can put a good amount of content in each, like, quote slide, even though it's not really a slide. So it's been really effective, and I will continue to use them, I think, as my main presentation program. So yeah, any feedback or thoughts about some of the presentations we've reviewed? Anyone?
Just curious, Michelle, is Prezi pretty user-friendly?
I think it's incredibly user-friendly. At first, it was really hard to figure out a little bit how to format some of the images, because you can, like, add arrows, you can move things around, and you have to get used to it. But once you get used to it, I mean, it took me about an hour, and then it was like smooth sailing, and so I feel really comfortable. You just have to learn the tricks, and they have a lot of videos, which I have in the, I think, one link in my resources handout that we can send out that goes over how to make a Prezi, and there's a lot of resources online on their website to how to make Prezis effective, and also, you know, tips on how to edit. But I thought they were incredibly easy to use.
Thank you. Is it free to use?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's free if you share your if you make everything public. But if you want to keep things private, and there's a few other additions, benefits to paying a subscription. But mine's free online for everyone to look at, and it's yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think Brandon makes an excellent point that you can go to new places and access it anywhere online.
Yeah.
That's a really great idea. And I've seen it, I just haven't played with it, so I'm a little bit nervous about jumping in.
You should just try it out and try out a few different of their templates just to see what it's like, and I think you'll pick up on it pretty quick. It's pretty fun.
Yes, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. So how about instead of reviewing the resources, I'm just, between myself or Pat, we'll send out some of the resource handouts I reviewed, like Prezi and HeW Deck, and also have a list of other presentation online resources, as well as like a list of places where you can go for free images, and then also some other tools for making presentations interactive, like polling apps and whatnot. So there's a list of resources that we'll send out to everyone. And then if you try them out, I'd love to hear how it goes. And so if you want to email me or call me, let me know how your presentations go. I'd love to hear back from you all. And then let's see. I think maybe we'll skip over the challenges and best practices, but I think most pressing is figuring out what we're doing next month for our student support meeting. Does anyone, after this meeting, does anyone feel so inspired to share a topic that they'd want to see as a presentation, or feel inspired to facilitate? It's not that bad.
What about what you were just covering with your Prezi? We didn't get to go through that a whole lot. We could look at, you had interviewing and you had, what was the first one?
It was like soft skills for medical thing.
That looked really interesting, and I know we had to kind of fly through. I think we had so much information this time. It was really helpful, but we could probably look at that a little bit more in depth.
Okay. Has anyone else used Prezi at all?
I have.
Yep, I've used it.
I have too. Yeah.
Okay, does anyone feel super confident sharing like best tips for Prezi and want to facilitate that part? And then I can give my examples. Please. Come on.
I might be able to help with that. This is Brandy.
Okay, yeah, or
I haven't had any new ones in a while, so I need to play around with it. But
or if you want to work together on it, we can both share and work together. I'm happy to do that with you.
Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Just out of curiosity for future, this is Pat at Clover Park. For future web meetings, has anybody had trouble with instructor buy-in? Getting
yes.
Kind of. Who's saying yes?
Who's
Brandy.
Brandy.
Okay.
So I think that might be an idea, and I'd be happy to facilitate that. I have pretty good luck with my instructors, and we've had a lot of great buy-in for us to go in and do presentations and that kind of thing, and they're more than happy always to give me the floor. So I think maybe in the future I could facilitate that. If Pam, that sounds like a good idea.
Pam, do you have any? Okay.
Where did Pam go?
You know what? Before I volunteer for that, I'm going to need to check my calendar. There's a day I will be out next month around there, so let me just double check that before I say sure.
Okay.
I was going to say, I see down in the chat that somebody said May. I think it's Pam probably. May, Brandy, June, Pat. And if we need to switch that around, Brandy, we probably can. But I'm a little concerned about that too, because I will be taking some time off in May as well.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Pam. I'm so sorry. I had my microphone muted and didn't realize it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's great. At least we have those two topics, and then we can discuss the May meeting. That's right after Memorial Day, so we may need to change that date depending on people's schedules. But at least we have a couple topics lined up. So thanks for volunteering, Brandy, and Pat. And who was the other person? Pat. Thank you. Just real quick before we close the meeting, I just wanted to ask if anyone else has any issues that they want to bring up, since we didn't get a chance to really share best practices. So just any pressing issues or challenges. Okay. Great.
This is Brandy. Was it Michelle or who was the last one speaking with the Prezi?
Oh, Michelle. Hi.
Okay, just making sure. Okay, Michelle, I will need to get with you, and I think we could put something together with between the two of us.
For sure. Absolutely. And I'm more available in May. I think I'll be out a bit in June. So.
Well, we could even go for the July one.
I don't know where that noise is coming from.
I think somebody's typing furiously.
Okay.
Trisha, I muted her.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, great.
Great job, Michelle. Thanks, everyone, for participating.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Pat. Thank you.
It was fun collaborating. You're awesome.
Thanks. Bye.